remember what I've done. We are all safer now than we have ever been.
Liar!
You have no idea what you're in for.
Well, I know for a fact what we're in for is going to be one heck of a good time. Anyways, welcome back, true believers and all you spectacular Spidey fans, to another really exciting Spider-Man PS4 related video. And in this video, we are going to go over all the amazing involvements that Spider-Man PS4 will have within this year's Game Developers Conference. So if you didn't know, the GDC, also known as the Game Developers Conference, is indeed an amazing convention where a bunch of talented game developers do come together throughout the entire country to present a bunch of awesome stuff relating to their games. And primarily with what the GDC entails, it does include job recruiting, internship applications, as well as behind the scenes presentations about certain games, game development, and lots more. And I can safely say for myself, since I did have a wonderful time attending GDC for the first time last year, I'm definitely going to be attending again this year, especially given how many presentations there are relating to Spider-Man PS4. So if you are someone who is personally going to be attending GDC this year, or is just invested within the conference itself, I will be giving you the rundown of all of Spider-Man PS4's involvements within this year's GDC. Since I did attend last year, I can tell you all myself that there wasn't too big of a presence for Spider-Man PS4 at GDC 2018, but that was mainly because Insomniac was still heavily in development for the game, and it was indeed a week before the entire Game Informer reveal in April. But now that the game has finally shipped, along with the entirety of the City That Never Sleeps DLC pack, Spider-Man PS4 will indeed have a massive presence at this year's GDC. And given that GDC is a place full of conferences and summits for game developers or people who are just fully invested within the gaming industry, there are going to be at least a total of 18 presentations that do directly connect to Spider-Man PS4 in multiple aspects. And even though I won't go over each presentation, I will leave a link to them in the description below so you can fully check them out for yourselves. And once again, if you are someone who is not able to attend GDC this year, don't worry, because the official GDC YouTube channel will be posting the presentations on YouTube once they are fully completed at the conference itself. However, you may have to be a bit more patient on that front because these presentations are so high quality in class that they do sometimes take weeks to months to upload on the GDC YouTube channel. So if you aren't able to attend, just know that these presentations will indeed be on YouTube sooner or later. So to kick off with the main keynote presentation for Spider-Man PS4 that will be featured at this year's GDC is indeed Conquering the Creative Challenges in Marvel's Spider-Man by Brian Intihar. So similar to the most recent DICE Summit, I do think Brian will probably bring up points that he did mention during that conference within this presentation at GDC, which will be very interesting to hear him talk about. Not only that, but given the teases he gave out throughout the DICE presentation, I do think that there is a chance that Brian may give some teases about the sequel at this presentation at GDC as well. So out of all the conferences that Spider-Man PS4 will have at GDC, this one is definitely going to be one of the most interesting. Next up is a presentation titled Marvel's Spider-Man, a technical post-mortem presented by Elan Ruskin from Insomniac Games. So if you are unaware, Elon is a senior engine programmer at Insomniac Games, so this presentation will definitely be a deep dive into the programming within Spider-Man PS4, which will be very interesting to know about. Moving on to another Insomniac's presentation is titled Marvel's Spider-Man, Procedural Lighting Tools, presented by X-Ray Halperin. So to elaborate once again, X-Ray Halperin is a senior technical artist at Insomniac Games, which is going to make this specific presentation another developer-heavy one, which is going to be very interesting to see be played out. As for another post-mortem presentation, we do have Marvel's Spider-Man AI Postmortem presented by Adam Noonchester at Insomniac Games. Adam is the lead gameplay programmer at Insomniac, so if you are a huge fan of how Spider-Man PS4 plays, you're definitely going to want to see this presentation at its finest. As we move on with the presentation list, there is another really interesting presentation that I do think will be one of the biggest highlights of GDC, titled Superhumans of New York, Managing the Many Faces in Marvel's Spider-Man, presented by Noah Alzair from Insomniac Games. Noah is the character technical director at Insomniac Games, so if you are a really big fan of the face models that were featured within Spider-Man PS4 like John Bubniak and Stephanie Tyler, I definitely think you will appreciate this presentation. As for a more humorous presentation, we do have one titled Animation Boot Camp, animating the main villain in Marvel's Spider-Man. And in parentheses it states, or what? I'm raking how many legs? With the speaker being Sophie Brennan at Insomniac Games. So this presentation is going to be another important one since Sophie is indeed a another character technical director at Insomniac Games, and mainly she's going to be discussing how Doc Ock was designed within Spider-Man PS4. And if you guys know me, you'll know that I love everything about Otto Octavius within Spider-Man PS4, especially once he does turn into Doc Ock near the end of the game. So seeing that this whole presentation is dedicated to how Doc Ock was created, I'm definitely going to be checking this out once I do attend GDC. As for the second installment of Animation Bootcamp, we do have it titled Script to Screen, the development diary of Marvel's Spider-Man, presented by Brian Weiser from Insomniac Games. So while Brian Intar was the creative director of Spider-Man PS4, Brian Weiser is the lead animator of the entire game. And seeing how great the behind the scenes video were for Spider-Man PS4 during the game's launch, I definitely think we're going to get another one of these during this presentation, which is definitely going to be really awesome to see. Next up in the bootcamp category relates to the game's art direction, specifically with the team growth and preserving team culture on Marvel's Spider-Man, presented by Jacinda Chu of Insomniac Games. And as you should all know by now, Jacinda Chu is the art director for Spider-Man PS4 from Insomniac Games, and everything that was implemented within Spider-Man PS4's artistic style is definitely all thanks to Jacinda and the amazing art team over at Insomniac. So seeing that this presentation is definitely a huge focus on the art itself within the game, it's definitely going to be one to check out if you are indeed attending GDC. Now as we move on to the halfway point of all these conferences, we do have a presentation titled Classic Game Design Postmortem, Swinging with Spider-Man, presented by Jamie Fristrom. And this one is definitely important for all you Spider-Man fans out there, because if you don't know who Jamie is, he's mainly the guy who created the entire swinging mechanic within Spider-Man 2, the movie game. So if you want to hear all about how he created the swinging system for Spider-Man 2, as well as his thoughts on Spider-Man PS4's swinging system, definitely check out this conference. And moving right back to Insomniac Games presentations themselves, we do have one titled Concrete Jungle Gym, Building Traversal in Marvel's Spider-Man, presented by Doug Shahan. So just like Jamie will be talking about Spider-Man 2's traversal system at work, Doug will be doing the same thing for Spider-Man PS4, discussing how they created the traversal system in the first place. And since I am a huge fan of Spider-Man PS4's traversal system, I definitely don't want to miss this conference, and you guys shouldn't either. But as for something relating to the sound of the game, we do have a presentation titled Designing the Bustling Soundscape of New York City in Marvel's Spider-Man, presented by Alex Previty and Blake Johnson. So Alex and Blake are both audio masters at Insomniac Games, and I definitely love the entire sound from Spider-Man's web shooters to the New York citizens to the New York cars all throughout New York City. And seeing how they managed to bring New York to life in a really great way within Spider-Man PS4, this is definitely going to be a very important conference to check out. As for something that mainly relates to the building blocks of game development, is a presentation titled Level Design Workshop, Building New York in Marvel's Spider-Man. It's still just level design, presented by Josue Benavides. So if you obviously couldn't tell already, Josue is a level designer at Insomniac Games, and he's going to be going over how creating an open world New York is different from that of creating a linear level from any other game. Especially knowing that Marvel's New York is 4 to 6 times bigger than Sunset Overdrive's open world of Sunset City, this presentation is definitely going to be interesting to see. As for another presentation that relates to New York, is actually directly called Marvel's New York, a case study in empowering your artist, presented by Jason Hickey. So as you see already, this title is pretty self-explanatory, going over Marvel's New York and how it was made by the artist who created it. But moving on to a presentation that appears to have more depth to it, is one titled Marvel's Spider-Man, a deep dive into the look creation of Manhattan, presented by Substance, with the sponsor speakers of Brian Mullen, Ryan Beno, and Matthew McAlfee. So if you're unaware, these are all incredibly talented environment artists at Insomniac Games, so if you do want to know how Manhattan was created, from the subway system to the sewers to the streets to the fauna, everything in the city, you definitely want to check out this presentation for everything that it holds. And with that presentation comes one which is eerily similar to it, titled Procedurally Crafting Manhattan for Marvel's Spider-Man, presented by David Santiago at Insomniac Games. Once again, this is another presentation relating to the development of Marvel's New York, specifically with the main island of Manhattan itself. Although, if you are looking for a presentation that relates to the inhabitants of New York, we do have one titled Technical Artist Bootcamp, Real-Time Cloth Solutions on Marvel's Spider-Man. And once again, this is another conference held by Sophie Brennan, who is going to go over how all the textures, fabrics, and suit designs were made for Spider-Man, as well as all the inhabitants of New York City. So with all the designs ranging from Spider-Man suits to the NPCs or the supporting cast of characters, this one is definitely going to be important to see how the main cast of characters was made for Spider-Man PS4. And speaking of the main cast itself, this one is extremely important, titled The Animation of Spider-Man PS4, presented by Robert Coddington of Insomniac Games. And as you should all know, Robert is the animation director at Insomniac Games, so every time we see one of those amazing cutscenes at work in the game, we do have Robert and the amazing animation team to thank for that. And finally, with the last presentation on the list for Spider-Man PS4's involvement with this year's GDC is one titled Tools for Marvel's Spider-Man, Editing with Immutable Data, presented by Ronald Pikett of Insomniac Games. So to end it off, Ronald is one of the main programmers at Insomniac Games, and this presentation is going to go over how the entirety of its data was implemented within the main game. So with this huge list of presentations just for Spider-Man PS4 alone, I definitely can tell that this GDC in particular is going to be one heck of a fun time. So once again, if you are personally attending GDC this year, I definitely recommend that you go and check out these amazing conferences, but if you aren't, just stay tuned to GDC's YouTube channel for any posts about these presentations. And hopefully during one of these presentations, we may get certain teases about the potential sequel to Spider-Man PS4, as well as possibly any more DLC content that may be added into the game. But until that time, from when the conference starts on March 18th and ends on March 22nd, thank you all so much for watching, and please let me know all your thoughts in the comment section down below. What do you think about all these GDC presentations, and which one do you think is going to be your most favorite? For me personally, I'm super excited to check out Brian Intar's presentation for obvious reasons, but besides that, I do think Sophie Brennan's presentation about Otto Octavius is going to be very exciting to see. And since I will personally be attending GDC this year, I will try my absolute best to cover everything and anything that does happen revolving the game. And as for a quick update to our Spidey Squad photo mode competition, we do have the recent winners for the Into the Spider-Verse suit of awesome photos that were taken by the community. So huge congrats to Atremenes Miles, at Javik122, at MattGon52725380, as well as at Spider_photography_man for these amazing shots within Spider-Man PS4. And for those of you who are participating within the photo mode competition, just know that the Spidey Squad founders and I do look at every single photo that is sent to us on a daily basis. And even though it is very hard to single down to 4 winners for a specific photo, we try and do choose the very best of the best photos that are taken within the game. And as an example, these are some of the shots that I personally took myself within Spider-Man PS4 for the most recent suit of our competition for the Spider-Punk outfit. So if you are able to take extremely cinematic, dynamic, and photogenic shots, they will most definitely be picked for the main winners of the photo mode competition throughout each week. But still, the main point of this competition is to go out there and have as much fun as you can taking photos of our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. So until the next Spider-Man PS4 update, everyone, thank you all so much for watching. Stay spectacular, Spidey fans. Peace out.
No one can take this away from us.
Amazing.